it's not really a merger of the tours. It's an acceptance of a huge sponsorship, and we don't even know how much.
It's called the formation of a new commercial entity, is what Jay Monahan calls it.
Well, you got to figure it's hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars, and that's got to help the PGA Tour. I just watched the Rory McIlroy news conference, and maybe surprisingly, he seems quite positive about this. He acknowledges that there are a lot of issues that still have to be unraveled, but he says there's a lot more money in it for the PGA Tour. And at some point in time, and it might take 10 years, we'll be back to where we were. So my negativity, which was pretty dramatic, and I think probably yours too, from yesterday, has sort of been tempered by this reaction. Because you got to figure that Rory McIlroy would be one guy who would be very negative on this whole idea, and he was quite the opposite. He was probably the most positive voice I have heard of anybody about this merger. And he's not being specific because he can't be. But he had a 6:30 a.m. meeting yesterday with somebody from the PGA Tour, and he seems to be okay with it all. Perkins, I'll throw to you first. You agree or disagree, or do you have what is your opinion of this?
Well, I mean, we've known for a million years, money talks, everything else walks. So the money talk, the oil billions win. The money always wins. So for 2 years, Monahan's been saying, "Are you embarrassed to be a member of the PGA Tour? Of course not. Blah blah blah. These are the people who drove the planes on 9/11, blah, 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 blah." And now imagine that. It wasn't a moral issue at all. It was about money. And once they got enough, Monahan rolled over like everybody rolls over for the money. So golf's just another modern sport. That's all.
Hodge, you agree?
Well, yes. I think, PGA's golf was beating LIV's golf. But LIV's money beat the PGA's money, and one was more important than the other. Monahan did what Phil Mickelson and Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka and the others did. He took the Saudi money, never mind McIlroy and the members of the PGA Tour that stuck with him and refused to take it. However this plays out, I think it might be tough for Monahan to survive, and yet it might be tough to remove him. But the Rory McIlroy comments were interesting, and yet, Bob, as you well know, he was hardly speaking for the entire membership of the tour.
No, he was speaking for himself, Dave. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and those who opposed him did so vehemently in the meeting and around the world. And yet, he speaks some logic. I mean, from the start of this thing, we all knew, I think, that it was going to come to one golf league worldwide somehow. We didn't know when, we didn't know how. But, ABA, NBA they were going to merge, and they did within 10 years. Same thing, AFL, NFL, WHA, NHL.
Yeah.
This is different given the Saudi factor, but ultimately, the big guys on the block remain the big guys, and the new kids wind up joining them. In this case, the new kids have got most of the money, and that turns things on its head.
The thing that I wonder about, and Dave, your reference to the other, the other leagues, that the startups, Wayne Gretzky was a big part of why the merger occurred. Dr. J was a big part of why the merger occurred. Joe Namath was a big part of why the merger occurred. Politics aside, and I think we have to touch on the politics at some point deeper. But is this because too many of the LIV guys were winning the majors, or were too high profile in the majors? They said they were talking for 7 weeks. But, when Koepka wins the PGA, does that change everything? Because you don't need to be a regular tour guy now to compete in all the majors. Is that such a factor, Perk?
Oh, possibly, but ultimately, it's all about the money. I mean, uh, I don't know if Koepka single handedly drove anything. I mean, he certainly didn't make it easier on the PGA Tour when he won the PGA Championship. The one angle that's not been mentioned, and I heard 6 months ago that the LPGA Tour was the next in the target of the Saudi money. And now that they control the men and snap their fingers and get whatever they want now with their money, I want to see them take over women's golf in a country where the women can't drive, but
no, they can drive. They can drive,
but they're going to drive golf balls. Like, I mean, come on. Like, I really want to see this happen now. I want to see the Saudis take over women's golf and see what the yelling and screaming is then. As I mean, there should be, but.
So what about a new basketball league? What's
that's the other thing. When are we going to see visible public or visible Saudi money in all the other pro sports leagues?
Well, you're seeing it in soccer.
What stops them? What stops them now when this occurs the way it has occurred? They just set their sights on the NBA, and
right.
How do you stop them?
Well, you don't is the answer. Look, at just a few years ago, I have a friend who is fairly wealthy, certainly in the millions of dollars, who has been a professional sports owner. And he did a deal with, I don't know whether it was a Saudi deal necessarily, but it was with that kind of oil money. And it was billions of dollars. And the idea was, here's a whack a dough, go and do something with it. Go buy a team, go build a league, go do something. Well, I got sort of involved with that. And I got to tell you, it's money.
Sure.
And you've got to pay attention to it from your own personal standpoint as well as from a business standpoint.
I was speaking to a good friend of ours yesterday, and I said, well, what's stopping them from starting to buy up Major League Baseball teams? And his response was perfect. He said, well, I know 30 guys who wish they would.
Yeah. Well, look, if somebody comes along and writes a bigger check than somebody else,
right.
You've got to pay attention.
Well, let's let Putin own the NBA then. He's got the money.
Now the Russians
where do we stop?
The Russians
if he wants to, I suppose he could. Yeah.
Well,
but would you allow it, Bob?
What are the four of us going to do in a political scene as big and complex as that?
Not the four of us.
No, but I'm just saying that at a certain,
what does our opinion matter?
At a certain point, doesn't there have to be some level of social conscience? Or are we just going down that rabbit hole?
You think there is now?
I mean, like
everybody says there is.
Today in golf there isn't.
You mean like John in politics?
Yeah, I know. I know. As soon as I said it, I realized what I was. But you have to think at a certain point that and one of the aspects of the PGA merger is it becomes a commercial entity, and where do the charities fit in again on the tour? Because the charities were a big part of what the tour did and donated.
Well, we don't know, but I would assume that the charities will still be heavily involved and will still benefit from, the things that the tour does, and probably even greater than what they do right now.
It's tough to talk now about something that we really don't know about, given the uncertainty about how this is going to play out, what it's going to look like, how many events, what kind of events. Maybe it's best for golf, and if it's best for golf, people are going to find it easy to ignore where the money came from. But if it's a mess for golf, if you got players fighting with players, if you got players fighting with the head of the PGA Tour, if you got players fighting with the head of the Soviet, the Saudi, that's good, Saudi investors, and the sport does not benefit, then this is a horrible announcement. But it may turn out the way Rory McIlroy thinks it will or hopes it will, and it may be the worst thing possible for golf. We don't know, because you tell me how it's going to work out. You tell me what it's
Well, we
going to
don't
look
know.
like in 2024. Nobody knows.
Nobody has any idea. And the truth of the matter is that, I'll turn on my television set tomorrow and watch the Canadian Open. And I'll turn on the television set today and watch the Golf Channel. And does any of this really affect me? And the answer is no, it doesn't.
You may not turn on your TV next year and watch the Canadian Open.